Yo, Shortbox Nation, this is Botter, and I'm here to tell you right now that con season starts early this year with the return of Northeast Florida's premier anime, comic book, and sci-fi event, Collective Con. That's right, Northeast Florida's largest pop culture convention returns for its 10th year on March 8th through the 10th at the Prime Osborne Center in Jacksonville, Florida. 10 years of Collective Con, they're pulling all the stops out to make sure this is a can't-miss event. And the guest list they got going, don't even get me started on the guest list. I mean, they've got A-list celebrity guests and voice actors from some of your favorite movies, anime, and video games like Elijah Wood and Sean Ashton, Ray Park, Trisha Helfer, Ross Marquand, Max Middleman, and Bo-Katan herself will be there, Katie Sackhoff. Tell me what other convention is giving you the opportunity to meet Frodo and Sam from Lord of the Rings, Darth Maul, and One Punch Man all under the same roof. Only at Collective Con. And if you're looking to get some of your favorite comics signed, or if you want to get an original sketch from some of the best comic artists in the world, well, you're in luck, because there'll be plenty of comic and creator guests there, like DC comic artist extraordinaire Clay Mann, Harvey Award-nominated illustrator John Taylor Christopher, Marvel and DC cover artist Chris Stevens, and acclaimed Star Wars author Timothy Zahn. They'll all be at Collective Con this year. And if you're looking to bring the family, or if you want to make a weekend out of it, you're in luck, because there'll be so much going on at Collective Con that weekend in the form of vendors, fan panels, video game tournaments, cosplay contests, after parties, and a bunch of fan events. You can purchase single and 3-day weekend passes now using the link in this episode's show notes, or by going to collectivecon.com to book your tickets and hotel. Buy your tickets now, and I'll see you at Collective Con, March 8th through the 10th. Now let's start the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Shortbox Podcast.
Season 9.
What's up, dude?
Yo, check that shit out.
That comic book talk show that brings you the best.
Shortbox Podcast is recorded live from Jacksonville, Florida.
Yo, Shortbox Nation. Welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for being here. If you're new to the show, welcome. Thanks for pressing play. My name is Botter, and this is the Shortbox Podcast, the comic book talk show that brings you the best conversations about comics and pop culture inspired by comics. This is episode 409, and today we're giving you a fresh review of the Marvels movie. And I guess really like the freshness level depends on when you're hearing this. If you're a Patreon subscriber, you're getting this on Saturday opening weekend. And if you're a normal listener, no offense, you're hearing this on Wednesday. What can I say? Being a supporter of the podcast has its perks, but I digress. We've been overdue a movie review for a couple of months now. The last one we did was when we gave a glowing review of Across the Spider-Verse, a movie that I think I saw twice, if not 3 times. That was the last time we did a movie review. And it got me thinking, we spent so much time last week talking about the now infamous MCU Variety article and talking about the MCU shortcomings and, the supposed downfall and the crisis, et cetera, et cetera. So I figured it would only be right to see the Marvels movie for myself. If anything, the article had the opposite effect of deterring me from watching this movie. It just got me more interested in seeing if the MCU would bounce back with this one. So I wanted to see if all the shortcomings and challenges outlined in that article would translate into film. So, I wanted to experience it for myself, and I'm dragging you guys along with me, all right? With that said, though, if you haven't seen the movie, or if you have any plans or interest to see this movie, this might be a good place to pause this episode or save it for later. We will be talking about important plot points and scenes from the Marvels that might spoil the movie for you. So consider this your official spoiler warning, all right? Proceed at your own caution. Or skip ahead to the last part of this episode and check out a new segment we're trying out that spotlights up-and-coming indie comic creators and kick-ass Kickstarter projects. In this episode, you'll hear about an awesome new Kickstarter for a brand new graphic novel called Everyday Black Belter. It's a collection of comics from the mind of a martially artistic family man, that family man being Jerome Cabanatan, who's a good friend of the show. He's doing a graphic novel that combines comics, martial arts, and hip-hop, i.e. the most shortbox appropriate comic project out there. You'll get to hear from Jerome himself at the end of the show, so please stay tuned for that. I think I've stalled long enough. With that said, let me go ahead and introduce my co-hosts today. All right, my panel is looking pretty strong today. We've got both of them on camera, so if you want to watch the video episode of this podcast, check it out on YouTube. But sitting in the Short Box studio with me and on mic number 2 is a voice you'll recognize because, in my humble opinion, she's the real star of these movie review episodes. Ladies and gents, we got Blythe Brumleve on mic number 2.
Thank you. I was waiting for that moment.
All right, we got Blythe with us. And calling in all the way from the heartland of the U.S. is Mr. Chris Hacker on mic number 3. What up, Chris? Dude, what is going on with the balloon?
I don't know why.
It's the new Apple settings. I've been dealing with this in my own interviews, that if you give a peace sign, the Apple computer gives like balloons. And
Get the fuck out of here.
Imagine being on like a professional, like, logistics B2B interview and someone is doing that.
Okay. Chris was on the pod, I think, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, and it just kept happening. And we tried to pretend like it wasn't going on because we couldn't figure it out.
We had to bring it up
So
at some
good
point.
to know that, your MacBook is so good at spying on you. It knows when you're throwing up a peace sign. That's pretty cute.
Outside of the balloons, Blythe, I just want to say it feels really good to be here, finally meeting you, but also being second place to Bodder's original plans that he was going to have.
Seriously.
I'm glad that we were a good backup plan.
I just got back from out of town. I pulled it together to go to the movies with him and do this. I could be sleeping right now.
And all it cost us was, just shy of 2 hours. I'm not even mad about the time commitment for this episode. All right. Speaking about runtime and all of that, fun fact here, this movie, and this was something I saw kind of celebrated about this movie in the early reviews, was that it was a rather short runtime. I believe it clocks in at around an hour, 45 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, around that time frame, which would technically put it, not even technically, it would make it the shortest MCU film of the, I think now 33 MCU films. The Incredible Hulk and I believe Iron Man #1 both clocked in at about an hour and 52 minutes. Avengers Endgame, no surprise here, being the longest of the MCU films at 3 hours and 1 minute. And did you know that, so that makes about the average length for all Marvel movies around 2 hours and 12 minutes. And I read a stat that if you were to watch all of the MCU films, just the movie releases, from the very first one up until Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, it would be a total runtime of 68 hours and 20 minutes. So it would take you about almost 3 full days to watch all of those movies, which doesn't sound too bad. I'm not going to lie.
I can do that.
Way worse time. Yeah.
Can I give you the top 5 really quick? Or I guess the low 5 of the MCU? I think I just pulled it up here a moment ago. So you were correct.
Please.
The Marvels is coming in at #1 or last place, which however you want to say it, at 1 hour and 45 minutes. #2 was The Incredible Hulk at 1 hour and 52 minutes. Tying at #2 is Thor: The Dark World at 1 hour and 52 minutes. #4 is Doctor Strange from 2016 at 1 hour and 55 minutes. And then #5, Thor 2011, the first Thor at 1 hour and 55 minutes. So a lot of Thor there at the end. And I don't want to like take over hosting duties here, but I want to ask you guys, because I have kind of an opinion on this. Did it feel like the shortest of the MCU films?
No, I mean, the overall, it felt, I guess, fine as far as runtime is concerned. I think the common complaint right now is that a lot of MCU materials feel too long, too bloated. And this one just felt like they hit the gas from start to finish. There were maybe some little gaps in between, I don't know if you want to get into it, but when they go to like the water planet, like that felt just like tonally off to me. So that was the only thing that kind of took me out of like the all gas, no brakes type of mentality from start to finish with this movie.
I'll probably echo that and say that the runtime is the least of this movie's problems. And I'm not trying to come off negative so quick, but I think there's different things you could point at that would, like to Blythe's point that she kind of hinted at. There's certain scenes that take you out of it, and then you kind of start thinking about the time. But I like that they respected my time.
Yeah.
Like that was shit. We got home, and for our listeners, myself, Blythe, and Chris have literally just got out of the movie theater maybe 20-30 minutes. So this is a very fresh review. So bear with us here. But yeah, we got home, and it's not even like, it wasn't even 10 o'clock. You know what I'm saying? It took me longer to set up than, it took to, I think, even watch the movie. What about you, Chris? Did you feel the runtime?
No, not at all. I mean, I felt like this movie, it's probably not any surprise that it just kind of moves at a breakneck pace, and we're just moving from the jump. I mean, from the opening scene, we get to meet our big bad, which, I think this is one of the biggest complaints of the movie is who is she? Firstly, Dar Ben is her name in the film, but who is she? Zawe Ashton is the actor who plays the character. But like from the moment we see her on camera, I'm like, okay. And I've heard the spoiler-free complaints about this villain in this film is a very phase one kind of throwaway villain. And I wanted to kind of like challenge that internally as I went into the film. And I think that opening scene almost was an affirmed thought of like, this villain is going to be a placeholder for the overall narrative for the other three, for Captain Marvel, for Monica, and for, Kamala. So, but all that to be said, it goes by very quickly. And I think the only part that felt like it lagged slightly was after they realized that their powers are interconnected. There's a scene where Kamala's parents go with Nick Fury up to the Saber ship. And right around that time was maybe the only time that I wanted to kind of check my watch or, just like I wasn't fully engaged with the film. But overall, like you said, I'm kind of happy that Kevin Feige and co. Nia DaCosta, the director, were respecting our time with this story and we're able to get us in and out real quick with our MCU fix.
Yo, this is Botter. Sorry for interrupting this episode, but I'll keep it brief. I wanted to let you know about a massive sale we have going on over at the Shortbox store on all of our merchandise and apparel. That's theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com. You can now save 20% off your entire order using the discount code YOO, Y-O-O. So if you've been waiting for the right time to finally buy that gauntlet snapback, or if you ever wanted to buy any of the shirts you see me wear on the podcast, well, now's your chance to get them for a steal. We still have a few sizes left of everything, but they won't last long, and once they're gone, they are gone. And then I mentioned that all of our apparel is screen printed on high quality material. None of that heat transfer or direct to garment stuff. Our shirts are some of the most comfortable ones you'll ever wear, and the hats look even better in person. So wear your support for the Shortbox Nation proudly, knowing that you're going to look damn good doing it. Get to theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com as soon as you can, and don't forget to use that discount code YOO, Y-O-O, to save 20% off your entire order. All of this information can be found in this episode's show notes if you want to get there faster. Thanks for not pressing fast forward. Now back to the show. Chris, just out of curiosity here, what was your audience like? What was the theater? Was it packed? Was there was it noticeable?
Yeah, it was pretty packed, honestly. So this is actually a good segue into like a bigger discussion, which is that the MCU overall for me has been lacking. And I hate to say that because I've been there since Iron Man 2008 and I've watched every film in theater since then. And it used to be this fun sort of adventure to try to get tickets for preview night, right? Obviously, we're recording this on Friday, November 10th, so it's a day after preview night. And I actually want to bring up preview night here in just a moment as well in terms of box office. But when I went to buy my ticket, I bought it at the door. I didn't even go to like Fandango or AMC app. Back in the day, you had to fight for that early screening.
Oh, yeah.
And I went to Adobe Theater here in Indianapolis. So that's like the premier way to watch it. You either watch it at IMAX or you watch it at the Adobe Theater. Do you want a large screen or do you want booming sound? I chose Adobe, and it was packed, but it wasn't, I was still able to get tickets at the door. So all that to be said, it was a pretty animated crowd. I know at one point I heard behind me these two people fighting because of this. I think there was some, there's an Asian actor in this who ends up being Carol's like makeshift husband from the Singing Planet.
Mm-hmm. The Prince.
Park Seo-joon, I think that's how you say it. He plays Prince Yan in the movie.
I think he is a very popular actor on the other side of the country, or the other side of the world. And there were some fans of his in my theater. And these two people were fighting during the end credit scene because every time this guy showed up on screen, these group of girls were like going wild. So by the time that we get to see the post credit scene, and cool. We'll talk about that here in just a bit, I'm sure. All I could hear was these two people yapping behind me.
Yeah, I would say our theater it took a while to get to like a medium. I think about half of it was
medium,
maybe full.
Being generous.
Yeah,
because I always gauge based on if I can put my purse in the seat next to me.
That's a good
and
point.
All of our extra food.
I did have a trash seat, yeah,
and I did have a trash seat.
That's right. But I will say the folks there did sound like they were having a good time. Like I heard audible laughs. Like it felt like people were the jokes were hitting for certain people. So that was
Iman Vellani also the most popular person in your guys' viewing as well?
We literally left the movie and I told her that this movie definitely accomplishes its mission of getting her in front of and on the big screen and in front of more people, and especially for folks like ourselves that skipped over the Miss Marvel show. So I didn't have any point of reference to like judge her, or I didn't go in knowing really anything about her show or what transpired. So this was an excellent introduction to her. Like I was like, oh, she is just as likable as I heard. The press runs that I did watch, like she seems really happy to be like her enthusiasm is pretty contagious. I think anytime she's on screen, like it kind of reminds you of being like a kid again, and being in love with your heroes. And I think that was a bigger theme. Not to get too ahead, but I think that was a big theme of the movie, is like hero worship and being a role model and an inspiration. And I thought through Iman Vellani's performance, like that theme was very strong.
Yeah, as soon as we got out of the movie, I looked to you and said she's going to be a star.
Oh yeah.
And she loves the MCU. They would be essentially like Kevin walking into my house right now and handing me the Spider-Man suit and saying, "You're Peter Parker for the next 6 movies. Go crazy." I would immediately hop on social media like Iman does. I would be writing a Spider-Man comic just like she is with Ms. Marvel, the New Mutant, because now officially in the comics, Ms. Marvel is a mutant now, as she is also in the MCU. So she's very enthusiastic, and I think as someone who watched Ms. Marvel on Disney Plus when it first came out, the first episode is absolutely a banger, and then the other 5 episodes are forgettable at best. She is very charming, and I think her side characters, as we've seen in this movie and the Marvels, her parents and her brother, and also we don't see her best friends in the Marvels movie, but also in the show, they're all great. It's the show around these characters that are kind of lacking.
And I guess one of the bigger reasons I skipped over the Miss Marvel show was that it just came off like family, family sitcom, and I don't really watch those anyway. So it didn't interest me in that regard. But I will say she definitely was the star of the show, if not. Yeah, I think it's an easy argument to say she's.
There was also a lot going on at that time. I think it was also like Game of Thrones was on at that time. Rings of Power was on. Right, yeah. So there were a lot of things competing for your attention, and that one just kind of fell to the wayside for me.
I guess speaking of audience, I asked about, what your theater was like and what the audience was like, because I'm looking at the current Rotten Tomatoes score just out of, curiosity. I don't think I ever really let any of these scores drive like my opinion or, me, obviously I went and seen the movie anyways, but I'm looking at the Rotten Tomatoes score at the time of this recording. It's, Friday, November 10th, the Friday of release date. Audience score is looking pretty, it's 85% right now, over 500 plus verified ratings, versus the 62% tomato meter, which is about like half of that mini rating. So, this is starting out early. It seems like, audience seems to like it. I want to say 62 is failure. That's like a mid movie,
Better than I thought, honestly.
Yeah, much better.
The MCU of yesteryear, your phase 1, 2, and 3, usually sat around anywhere between 70 to 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. And then it seems like since probably, since the pandemic, I would even say a lot of the television series and the movies have been sitting around that 50 to 60 with your occasional dud like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which I think was in the 30s. Black Widow was pretty low as well, if I remember correctly. So, 60, or what did we say it was, 80, 81%? 85.
85% for audience score, 62.
I guess, can I just quickly say, Aaron, who is my co-host on the Oblivion Bar, is a notorious hater of the first Captain Marvel from 2019. And I'll be the first to admit that I may have looked at that film with rose-colored glasses on initially, because I adore the Kelly Sue DeConnick run from 2012. The Captain Marvel, this version of Carol that we have in the movies is from Kelly's run from back in the day. And I love that run. So when I saw that first film, I saw so much of that run in that movie, and I loved it. Going back and watching it here recently, I feel like it's kind of dampened a little bit. My thoughts on it. It is kind of a forgettable MCU film. It's a phase 1 film coming out during phase 4, and it seems, or I guess phase 3 at that time. So we were talking about this before the recording. The phases are all over the place. We don't even know what phase we're on anymore.
Listeners, here's how washed I am. I had to literally Google what phase of the MCU are we in, and Google is no help either. These articles are terrible trying to figure out sometimes the MCU phase timelines,
like a recipe blog.
Yeah.
But all that to be said,
that's a good point.
I had a great time with this movie. It is silly. It doesn't look great. It's like some of the errors in this movie, like the green screen, a lot of the main complaints with the MCU that we've seen over the last couple films are still very present. But I think where the movie succeeds is with its main characters, with Iman Vellani, with Tiana Paris, and with Brie Larson. I think those three together and individually are really great in this movie. And I outside of some like 1,000-yard stares that we get from Brie Larson, and outside of some very annoying screams from Iman Vellani, I think everybody is great in their role.
1,000-yard stares describes Brie Larson's acting like pretty perfectly. Because I was telling Blythe pretty bluntly, Brie Larson in this role, I don't think does anything for
Oscar-winning
her acting.
Actor Brie Larson.
Fair enough, but in this role, I don't
get
see
it.
it.
Yeah,
it doesn't resonate with me per se, and none of the emotions comes across really well, and I don't know, it just doesn't resonate for me per se.
Don't tell her to smile. Don't tell her to smile about her. You would look pretty if you smile, Carol.
But back to the score, and Chris, I think I'm right there with you. I think if you're going in and expecting, kind of like just outrageous fun, then you're gonna get it. I mean, I'm looking at this audience score, and the icon being like a popcorn, a can or a tin of popcorn. Yeah, this is like a popcorn
total
movie,
brain candy.
It's goofy, big time. And I'm looking at this critics consensus, and it's I think it nails it for me. It says funny, refreshingly brief, and elevated by the chemistry of its three leads. The Marvels is easy to enjoy in the moment, despite its cluttered story and jumbled tonal shift. I think I would add jarring too. There's a lot of just jarring moments in it that took me out, and there's moments I really wanted to really like it. Like when they're bonding together and having that training montage, I was in it. I was like, oh wow, this is like kind of deep. This is like a lot of fun. But then they just had, like Blythe brought up the water planet and the random musical.
Awful.
That, I guess that's where it comes in, the jumbled tonal shifts of this quote. It was like those moments where I was like, all right, yeah, okay, this is
sure.
fun. This is weird. I told Blythe in the car that this sits about 65%. I think I'd give it a strong mid 60. Chris, where are you at with it?
So we're rating it out of if I was giving it a score on Rotten Tomato, that's what we're kind of going for.
Yeah, something like that. Like out of 100%.
The long pause.
Sorry, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you
now. It's weird. I don't know why we're pausing. But anyway, sorry.
I thought was it like the dramatic long pause?
Yeah, I was like, whoa, what's the score, Chris? He's like 12.
Sorry, I missed the part. So we're doing this out of the Rotten Tomato scoring. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if we're okay, so I guess the real way to do this is I have to compare it to the original Captain Marvel. So if I was going to give Captain Marvel a score, I would probably give that like a 75 out of 100. I would probably give this 70. No, I'll say 68%. 68% out of 100 for the Marvels, because I think it's just only slightly. The fun parts are much more fun than the original, but I think we are starting to see the serious cracks in the Marvel universe right now. Like the Marvel Studios itself is crumbling in a lot of different ways. This Variety, article that we keep referring to, I think was spot on some very specific points. And I think this movie is a great kind of reflection of that.
Okay. Well said. Blythe, what about you? What are you rating this?
I would say it was a good escape for a couple of hours, but I'd still only give it like a 6 out of 10. So Rotten Tomatoes, I guess 60% for me.
All right. So we've given our kind of high level remarks, ratings out the way. Let's get into like some of the nitty gritty.
Do you mind if I just pull a quick audible before we get to the end credits? Because we're kind of like at the beginning, like before we start talking about the film. And I want to briefly bring up the box office, if that's okay, because I feel like that adds a little bit of context to where we are with the MCU. So the Marvels earned 6.6 million domestically during its preview night. So that was yesterday. And it's projected to get 49.6 million domestically. Now, that is incredibly low compared to the 2019 original at 20.7 million during preview night, which it eventually got 159.4 million in its opening weekend. To compare that, we've got the Marvels, which is projected to get basically 50 million compared to 2019's Captain Marvel at basically 160 million. That's wild. The difference is insane. Now, there's a lot of things that go along with that. Of course, Captain Marvel came out in between Infinity War and Endgame, so there's a lot of hype around that. It was during that, great phase. Captain Marvel was a big character, and of course, I think the Marvel suffers because of the reaction from Captain Marvel. Like I think there's a lot of things going on. Not to mention SAG-AFTRA, WGA. There's a lot of things that like they couldn't promote this movie until like yesterday, essentially. So this is the third lowest MCU opening in the history of the MCU, only ahead of The Incredible Hulk at 2 million in its preview night, and then at 55.4 million in its opening weekend, and then the original Ant-Man at 6.6 in its preview night, and then 57.2 million in its opening weekend. Now, my last little bit of movie money news is that other films with a higher preview night than the Marvels, we have Thor: The Dark World got 7.1 million in its opening night. The Eternals got 9.5 million in its opening night. And then just to put a little cherry on top, we've got Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour, got 16.7 million in its opening night. So that's where we're at right now, everybody.
You wouldn't be Chris Hacker if you didn't mention Taylor Swift. If you didn't drop a Taylor Swift bar, that was good. And and throughout that whole time, I think I changed my mind. Let's save the end credits for later, towards the end, and let's talk about maybe other scenes that were most prominent. Obviously, this is very short retrospective, but when you think back to the movie, where does your mind go as far as like standout scenes or most immediate scenes? Blythe, if you want to take that?
Oh gosh, that's such a tough question because I feel like it really is just all of the scenes that Kamala was in. That character just really drew me in. I kind of have a different opinion than Chris in that I don't think that the three of them had very good chemistry together. I thought that Kamala was really the shining star of the three of them, and they almost felt. There's a lot of rumors like behind the scenes in that the Monica Rambeau character and Brie Larson's did not get along whatsoever, and that it was a lot of sort of fighting between not fighting, but just
artistic
general
differences?
sure, but maybe just like personality differences between the two, and I thought that was very evident on screen. And I thought Kamala was really like the comedic break. She was really the sentimental break for me. I loved her family. So it was really interesting to hear from the perspective of watching the Disney Plus show, because I went into this initially worrying within the first sort of 20, 30 minutes that, crap, I didn't watch her show. I didn't finish Secret Invasion. Is that going to affect my viewing experience here? Because it just, I think, sort of speaks to the overall Marvel landscape that I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to pay attention to. Am I supposed to watch everything to be prepared for the next thing? And I was initially worried that that would affect my viewing experience. And so all that to say that really any scene that she was in, that Kamala was in, was I thoroughly enjoyed. Her family for sure. But then everything else, Samuel L. Jackson, I kind of made the comment to you that he's just collecting checks, kind of like Harrison Ford. Totally respect it. But a couple of his like one-liners and scenes in that I thought were very good. But I would say Samuel L. Jackson and Kamala Khan really just saved it for me for this movie.
Samuel Jackson, they're like, hey, this movie needs a little edge. Let's bring Nick Fury in so he could say, shit twice at least and like shoot people. Like he's definitely the edge. I think I missed the days when we only saw Nick Fury for like 10 seconds in the movie, like having the mysteriousness to him, that espionage angle.
We're putting together a team.
Yeah, I kind of miss that. Now he's like very apparent, face front. And I think
he's like Pappy that hangs out in the background and just shoots people. All Pappy's along for the ride.
Yeah, he definitely brings the edge, like that adult humor, But I would say the scene that is living on my head rent free right now is maybe not my favorite scene, which was that training montage, but maybe the weirdest scene I've probably seen in an MCU film, which was their big escape plan, which was to have all of the scientists or everyone on board get eaten by baby alien kittens.
Hated it.
Flurkins.
Yes, thank you, Flurkins, not baby kittens. But I should put some respect on the aliens' names.
You better put some respect on the Flurkins. Okay, they'll eat you. They'll eat you.
You better put some Flurkin respect on these Flurkins. But it was just really fucking weird. I was like, this feels like it. This was a Guardians of the Galaxy throwaway gag or scene that they were like, hey, let's recycle that. Like this probably would have fit better in a James Gunn movie where it's pretty outlandish and wild. But I think even he would be like, nah, that sounds like a pretty terrible idea. Like this, and they spent so much time on it. And I'm like, man, for a movie that doesn't have that much runtime, we're spending a lot of time on some really wacky, goofy, the stakes didn't feel that high because it was so goofy. in the middle of this escape scene. It kind of just like took me out of it. I was like, man, this is really weird. This is just like weird.
You just described the MCU in a nutshell, because anytime they have a moment where a serious moment presents itself, they have to undercut it with some comedy somewhere. And that's essentially what they did. And that's because I think in that moment they had the kind of come to Jesus moment with Monica and Carol, right? That was around that time where they had to kind of come to grips with the fact that Carol did come back to Earth at one point while Monica was blipped during Endgame. So they were kind of coming to grips with that. They were kind of planning. They went to that singing planet. Was it Alanda? So a lot of things happening all at once. And yeah, it felt like they needed to get the kids back on board with a funny cat montage.
You know what? And I guess I can go ahead and say this because it's appropriate here. This movie made me think that Marvel was trying to pander to too many people, like was trying to cater to too many people. Like they wanted like the family, like make it a family movie, make it a sci-fi movie, make it like, a redemption for the Captain Marvel. Like it was almost too much in one movie with not enough like runway to do all of that like really well. And some of the scenes that we decided to like stay on for a good bit just was really interesting. And like, I go back to jarring. That was just a really jarring scene.
Wasn't the director, I think I'm blanking on her last name, but Nina
DaCosta.
Yeah,
she didn't finish the film. And Kevin Feige stepped in, and she had interviews where she said this is Kevin's film. And she didn't even stay around to promote. Like she's already in another city, like filming a new movie, and she didn't stay to finish this one. So it felt very much, that was evident in the end result.
Well, I think the shooter some bail. I also understand that Marvel tends to do that too. Like that's kind of like the norm, where it's like you get your movie to a good stopping point, and you do start working on your next project. And I heard her say in an interview in her defense, she said that when she left to start the other movie, the Captain Marvel movie, like everyone knew the vision, knew the plan, like, had very clear instructions on, what to do in post credit.
Well, it was also delayed twice. So how long are you supposed to wait around for Disney to make these kinds of decisions?
Yeah. Well, and this kind of brings up a larger point in terms of like, Bar, you mentioned a moment ago about like, who are they trying to please here? Is it everyone? Because then that's when you're going to please no one. And and again, I think that's a good kind of an analysis of the MCU since post-pandemic, since Endgame really, is that they're shooting their net too wide. And it seems like the people who were on board and who were going to these movies are no longer invested anymore. And again, I think, of course, we're talking about this literally within hours of seeing it on the second day. So we're clearly still in this somehow. But like, there's something to be said again about the box office. We were just talking about a moment ago about how, the original Captain Marvel, that's not a great example again, because we were like mid Infinity War / Endgame. So people were very much invested in not only Captain Marvel, but the MCU. But like, I still think that if you look at it, the fact that the Marvels is the third lowest opening weekend overall is wild compared to its predecessor, which was $1 billion movie. Like Captain Marvel is one of like 7 MCU films that hit $1 billion. So there's something missing. Again, that Variety article that people are kind of, you alluded to it in your last episode, Botter, here on the Short Box, that like, how much of this can we take for verbatim? Like some of this is speculation, some of it isn't, of course, but I'm kind of spinning my wheels because I was thinking about what my scene was during this film. And I think it might be when they first discovered that their powers are entangled, and you have that Skrillex Rat-a-tat song playing in the background. And I thought it was fun. Like, specifically, and I know we keep harping on this, but like Ms. Marvel, Iman Vellani, really showcasing what she can do here with her powers. Of course, in the comics, it's her embiggen powers, but in this, she has like light-based powers.
And I'm not mad at the light-based power. I know like there's a lot of some fanboys that were like upset about the change, but it still looks good.
Not a problem at all.
They're still able to accomplish what she can do. I mean, yeah, the look looks vastly different, but I thought the execution, she's still doing the same thing. She's throwing big fist punches. Now she can also like create those little steps. I thought, yeah, it was cool to watch her powers as a first timer, like really get to see it like in motion. I was like, oh, this is not bad at all.
They're separating her from Reed, of course. I think that's like the main, I think that's something that a lot of people are kind of privy to, is that we're going to be getting the Fantastic Four here in the next couple of years.
Like that, yeah.
And of course, he has a very similar power as, Kamala Khan. So let me ask you this, before we move on, I'm curious because talking about this scene where, again, we had the Skrillex track in the background and they're all kind of figuring out how they keep using their powers and they keep switching in between each other. For everyone who watched Secret Invasion, which I'm talking to all 9 of you right now, isn't it wild that Nick Fury is just like totally happy, totally cool after the events of Secret Invasion? Like did that happen? Like, what are we doing right now?
That's a good point, because before the movie started, Blythe had turned to me and said, where is this at in the timeline? And I could not, and I think this maybe more so speaks to my, whatever you want to call it, disinterest in keeping track of it all anymore, like, what I used to, because I don't really know where this movie, I can assume this is like supposed to be the current latest timeline, but I'm not really that confident. I don't know how, like, to your point, where Secret Invasion fits in.
He lost Maria Hill. He lost his best friend, his best skull friend, and his surrogate daughter hates him, and he lost his wife. Now he's just chilling up on the Saber ship again. You know what I mean?
This is how he hides his pain. He hangs out with 300-year-old scientists, astronauts.
Did he get himself a new Skrull boo? You think?
Possibly.
I wonder.
Possibly.
Yeah, possibly.
Those 2 characters, I don't even think got their name. I remember thinking, like, I don't know any of these characters' names from the villain. I know Chris, you said the villain. Yeah.
Which I think is a very forgetful. That's a terrible name. Like, I think as soon as I heard her name, I was like, forgetful villain.
I will not remember this. I'm going to look it up later.
Can I also say that what an interesting time for this movie to come out. And for some reason, I could not hone in on the word entanglement and not think, Jada and Will Smith. I'm like, man, if they would have just released this movie when it was supposed to come out.
My wife's name out your...
If they would have dropped this movie when it was supposed to come out, they could have like got ahead of the whole entanglement now being tied to those fucking weirdos, So just a little thing I noticed.
Well, and speaking of names really quickly, before we move on, I want to just quickly bring up that during the credits, when I was waiting for the end credit scene, they were showing, they always have like the animated end credit scene. During that, or no, I'm sorry, it was afterwards. It was after the mid credit scene. They kind of go down the line really quickly. And one of the actors, or one of the characters in the film, is Dorji. And I remember thinking, who is this? Like, how do I know his name? And he's the emperor. He's like the leader of the Skrulls on that planet that eventually gets sucked up into, the not the water. It's the air that Dar-Ben.
Yeah. She takes the atmosphere from their refugee planet.
And I remember thinking, like, who is this character? Because the name sounds familiar. And I looked it up afterwards. He's the guy who creates the Super Skrull in the comics. Now, obviously, I'm sure that's not what happens in the MCU because that was Secret Invasion. But like, I just thought that was really interesting that they brought him into this movie, and he was the one who created the Super Skrull program in the comics. So,
Chris, that is such a comic book deep cut. I wish I had the Homer soundbite. Nerd.
Nerd.
All right. So we just talked about the most prominent scenes that, we're still in our head after this viewing. Let's get into some positivity. What are some of the highlights? We've spoken at length about Iman Vellani. I want to, let's play the name game. I'm sorry, I'm kind of shifting really quickly, but let's play the name game. And I'm going to name some of the characters and just tell me what scenes come to mind, any words or commentary. We've spoken at length about Iman Vellani. Let's go to Monica Rambeau. What scenes or words do you got for Monica? Not very much, apparently.
I
Beautiful. Tiana Paris is stunning. I'll say that.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of a cop-out.
You know what?
What else is there?
I've got one. I guess I am going to just skip forward to the end scene, but her waking up and seeing her mom. And, that scene there reminded me of episode 1 to WandaVision, how fucking crazy that episode was, focusing on her waking up, post, coming back from the blip. She just missed, her mom dying. So that payoff was pretty cool to see, and I thought she really acted her ass off in that moment. That was really believable. And also, and I guess this ties into maybe a highlight for me, which was that kind of training montage. But when Carol Danvers, Monica, and Kamala both have that memory thing hooked up together, I thought that was a really cool way of kind of telling you how they're all connected by showing you. And I was like, yes, finally, like more show. She's telling Carol, like, hey, I don't want to see this. Like, I don't want to see your moment with my mom, the last moments of my mom through your vision. I thought that was a good way of showing that friction between them. Chris, aside from the actress being stunning, anything you want to add about Monica before I move on?
Yeah, I'm gonna set my male gaze aside for a moment and also say that Monica, I think her role on the team of, again, they even I'm gonna say a brief gripe and then I'm gonna talk about Monica. Well, anytime that a movie says the name, like like Will Smith, so what are we, some kind of Suicide Squad or something? That's what she does. I think it's Kamala. Kamala's like, so we're the Marvels.
Yeah.
Oh, we're a team. I hate that. But anyway, Monica, I think her role on this team is that she's kind of like the oak tree. You've got Carol, who is, her bravado is just blowing out of the spaceship. She just believes that she can do everything by herself because she has been for a while. Again, going back to that scene in Endgame where she's like, not a lot of planets have the Avengers. I'm all that they have, and she believes that wholeheartedly. She's been alone doing this herself for a very long time. So, and we see this multiple times in the movie of her trying to take this all on by herself. So we've got her on one side. Then we've got Kamala on the other side, who's just fangirling the entire time. And anytime that she's kind of like the,
she's the realist.
I don't want to say like, well, yeah, of course. And I don't want to say she's like a damsel in distress, but like she will often put herself at risk because she wants to help. And she's so young and she doesn't understand that her actions have consequences in these moments. And it happens multiple times on that Tarax planet that we see the Skrulls. So you have both of these big personalities on each side of you. And it feels like Monica is the only one that's like thinking levelly throughout this entire film. And it's ironic because at the end of the film, she's the one who sacrifices herself in that, and she ends up in that other reality. So I found that really interesting. And she has her kind of like Iron Man moment, which I don't think was earned, but it was still pretty cool to see.
How did she get from WandaVision to this role here? Did I miss a big part of that transition?
No,
Did you not see WandaVision, Blythe?
I did. I loved it. But didn't she what happened after that she's now working for Nick
They explained
Fury?
it in the movie. She said that, that she got, she was earthbound because they wanted to study her powers. And that's how she ended up with Nick Fury or something like that. They explained it in the movie. I obviously didn't do a good job of catching all of it, but you know what I'm saying? That was a quick little exposition line.
The end of WandaVision, she meets a Skrull in that theater in
oh, that's right.
At the end of WandaVision, and they essentially recruit her to Sword. Or I keep saying Saber, it's Sword. I don't know why I keep getting that mixed up, but it is Sword. And in the movie, she says that she wanted to go to space, but like you said, she got kind of grounded here on Earth because
I'm thinking of, yeah.
They weren't going to space anymore. So I think that's it. But again, it's kind of a leap that she immediately starts working for Nick Fury. It's like Nick Fury, like out with Maria Hill, bring in Monica Rambeau.
Didn't even have a chance to cry.
Damn.
And it's I guess it's wild to hear that even in the MCU, NASA is having trouble funding trips to the fucking outer space.
Right. Where's Elon in this universe? Get him involved with Sword and Shield.
All right, who else do we got? Let's go to the star of the show. Standout moments, or what comes to mind when you think of Brie Larson in this movie as Carol Danvers? Any standout scenes or moments?
Ironically, she's kind of the low end of this team. I think she has the least amount to offer because again, she's got that 1,000-yard stare. And I love Brie Larson. We were making fun earlier about her being an Oscar winner because she is, but like other than her Oscar win for The Room, she's done kind of crap movies since then. I mean, I can't think of another film outside of Scott Pilgrim versus the World and Captain Marvel that she's been like good to average in. So, yeah, I mean, in this movie, she's kind of a vehicle. She's like you would have thought that it would have been Kamala being the vehicle for the audience, but it seems like Captain Marvel is kind of the vehicle for the audience. She's kind of along for the ride, it seems like, in this movie. And she doesn't really have like a saving moment. She doesn't save Monica at the end of the film. She doesn't take out the big bad. I mean, kind of, but the big bad kind of takes out herself. But yeah, it's odd, right?
I think that was sort of the overall storyline with her character as a whole, is that she's been sidelined in her own movie. And if you think about the juxtaposition of where she was being positioned
in the Endgame, where she was like,
Endgame, she's the next big thing after Endgame, and now she's been sidelined in her own movie, in a movie that has been delayed several times, and she's not even the star of her own movie. And I think
right.
With a lot of like red carpet interviews that she's done, some of the press tours that she did previously with a lot of the Avengers crew, I just It's such an interesting storyline to watch with both her character just in real life and then on screen as well. Just how she sort of hinged her entire career essentially on this character. And now what is it for?
Doesn't it kind of seem like Brie Larson just doesn't want to be Captain Marvel anymore?
I was just about to say, she did a really good job of convincing me she's probably done with this. And I wouldn't blame her, right? Like, she's had to deal with a lot playing this role.
Right.
I mean, a lot of it just
Freaking
being
incels.
A lot of it being from toxic fan base. I'm sure like there's a lot of industry drama and behind the scenes,
and she's
corporate
also
stuff.
just not the nicest person either. Like if you saw some of her press runs, like she's kind of a jerk, and maybe people just didn't like working with her.
She got that serious RBF for sure. That's that.
I was going to say Monica Rambeau's character, that actress, reportedly they did not get along on set. And so if it's a lot of issues surrounding you, maybe it's you.
I will say she did a good job of passing the torch. And that is, and I think when did I say it? Was it WandaVision? I at first said, my theory is that this entire phase is, them passing the torch. Like, hey, it's time to, these actors are aging out. They want to do different things. Whatever the reason may be, it's time for us to go ahead and bring in the new crop of actors, fresh young faces, get that, younger target demo. And this is what that movie felt like. It felt like a filler, but also passing the torch. Let's set up, Iman Vellani. Let's get her on the big screen. Let's get her introduced. I mean, Chris, I'm right there with you. I felt that Brie Larson was like, let's get this done. Let's get this done so I can move on from this shit.
Can we hurry up? I got to be on the set of Fast X in the next 10 minutes, guys. I got to cash that check really quick as well.
I am curious of what you guys think about, I guess, maybe the tonal shift in Marvel with going to more of the Kate Bishop and Kamala Khan, they have the humor, they have the personality.
Charisma, they've got charisma.
But do they have the seriousness?
I think they just need to have a serious, but I think with the right script, yeah, I think someone like Haley Steinfeld?
Haley Steinfeld.
Steinfeld, thank you, can do it. Iman Vellani, I'd be curious to see how she does, like, drama and very serious acting, but, maybe that's not her role. Maybe, they empower someone that does that really well.
And maybe that's just the overall shift with Marvel in
just
general.
Lighter, funner.
Yeah, lighter, funner, younger. Maybe that's just what it is now.
It's like Men in Black, old and busted, new hotness. Old and busted, new hotness.
I don't want to speaking really quick. Speaking of Men in Black, big shout outs to Tessa Thompson for a very short cameo.
Oh, yeah.
But she decided to show up in her Men in Black costume from the last movie she did. Right? I was like, she showed up in this black white suit. I think it was pinstripe.
And also continuing the fan theory that Valkyrie and Carol are in a relationship.
Yeah,
I got a little kiss on the cheek there.
I was like, wow, the one scene where Brie Larson has got some sort of chemistry with the other actors. Yeah, you're right. It plays into the fan theory.
Well, okay, so we were talking about this a moment ago, and I want to keep this conversation going because I don't want to sound like an old curmudgeony. Oh man, back in my day, 2008, Phase 1 was so great, But like, none of these newer actors, minus Tom Holland, have the stature of a Robert Downey Jr., a Chris Evans. Chris Hemsworth and Jeremy Renner are still kicking right now, by the way. Scarlett Johansson, like, these actors could carry a film by themselves. Now, against, Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow, your temperature may vary depending on how you feel about that film. But like, I think I'm trying to think, like, this has been the biggest issue with the next phase, among many issues, is like, who is taking the reins? Who is taking over?
Who's the point person?
Right. Is it Doctor Strange? I don't think so. Multiverse of Madness wasn't that good, if you ask me. Is it going to be Black Panther? All things considered, I don't think it's going to be what's her name. And unfortunately, Chadwick Boseman is no longer with us. Is it going to be Chris Hemsworth? His last movie was bad too. So it's not going to be Captain Marvel either, because we've been talking about it for the last hour. So what do we do here?
But Chris Hemsworth is a prime example of an actor who is, I think he's gone on to say, like, I'm ready to do other stuff.
He said he won't come back unless there's like actual changes to the Thor character.
Yeah, and also apparently he has some health issues that he's worried about as well, where like his acting in general is kind of at risk at the moment. So I'm sure he doesn't want to waste. I think his family has it's either Parkinson's or ALS. Or one of the two.
They put out a whole show about it on Disney Plus, of him like trying to fight mortality, which I'm kind of interested in watching. But yeah, he's got to Chris's point, like he's got health things that have, I think, maybe shifted his perspective and priorities. I got one more character I want to bring up. And, kind of interestingly, looking at this IMDb, there isn't a lot of like big actors or roles in this movie to pick from, even though in my mind, it felt like a big cast, but not really looking at this IMDb. And I think the last actor that I want to hear your thoughts on was our antagonist, Dar-Ben, played by Zawe Ashton. Any scenes or commentary come to mind?
Very forgettable.
I will say this. The motivation for her, was commendable. And I think if they would have spent just a little more time with her origin, with with on the planet of Hala, like seeing how the Kree are living now. You know what I'm saying? They did a very quick scene where, they're all in gas masks and they're afraid to take it off to breathe in the air. But I think really kind of showing us like that war, because they mentioned the Kree Skrull War. They also mentioned, ever since calling Carol Danvers Annihilator, which to go quickly back to Brie Larson, Carol Danvers, that is one thing I will say is that when she talks about like feeling bad about being called the Annihilator and, Monica, I didn't want to go back and for you to see me like that. I thought that was maybe the best acting we got out of Brie Larson. And probably the one scene where I was like, oh, this is pretty good. Like this is complexity to her character. But back to Dar-Ben, I was like, oh, this is a really interesting way of her like wanting to, because she didn't have beef with anyone but maybe the Annihilator. I'm sorry, Carol Danvers. Really, her beef was just with Carol Danvers, but her main focus was like trying to restore like, the planet for her people. And for her to be stealing, I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like she's stealing the atmosphere from this one planet, the ocean from this one planet, and then the sun was an interesting villain plan. But I think the execution just felt, I don't know, it left much to be desired because we didn't really get to know her. It was just like, hey, she's bad. She's doing these bad things. And here's her, one-line justification. But I think if we would have lived with her a little longer, maybe. And given her a way more threatening name because Dar-Ben just does not strike fear in my heart at all. But she was a badass. When she was when she was taking them on, all three of them on towards the end, I was like, damn, the violence in this kind of turned up a notch for a second, like her putting the hammer down on Kamala Khan's head. Oh, yeah. It was a little like, oh, dang, okay, MCU, you still got a little bit of a bite. So that's what comes to mind for me. Do you guys want to add anything about Dar-Ben?
Yeah, I mean, Dar-Ben is one of those characters that in the comics, I know him from Silver Surfer. He's a big part of the middle run during the early 90s. At one point, even Dar-Ben creates like a robotic Silver Surfer and eventually is like absorbed into the Supreme Intelligence. It's a very vague memory of reading that story. But, in terms of the character in the in the MCU, I want to slightly echo what you said, Botter, in terms of like her half-baked plan. It seems like her arc is very similar to a lot of, and we mentioned this earlier, as like phase 1, phase 2 villains, whereas like a simple conversation with the hero, a 10-minute conversation with Carol would have totally avoided all of this. Hey, guess what? I have binary powers. I can restore your son right now.
That okay, is a good point.
Yeah. We're good. All right, awesome. But of course we can't do that, right? Because then there's
when Monica mentioned that towards the end, I was like, "How long have you been sitting on this information?"
You couldn't have mentioned that. What's going on here? But also, I want to point out as well, Zawe Ashton is engaged to Tom Hiddleston, and we just got the finale of Loki season 2, so they're having quite the weekend. If you guys haven't seen the ending of Loki season 2, a lot of things happening over in that household. So,
all right. So, anything else to add about Dar-Ben? We good on that?
No, I thought she was easily forgettable.
Probably a bottom 5 villain of all time.
Or you could rephrase that as a top contender for most forgettable villain.
She's either the best worst villain or she's the worst best villain. One of those two.
It's clearly this movie was not about giving us an empowering antagonist or one that we really resonated with. The main job of this in my eyes was to pass a torch to Kamala Khan and Iman Vellani and get her set up, and to maybe wrap up some loose ends between Carol and Monica. And if I'm looking at it like that, then I'm like, all right, mission accomplished. But it wasn't, I don't know, it just, I was telling Blythe this, Chris, I had a moment, and I don't think it's because of this movie per se. I think it's just I've had the MCU on my mind all week, for the last 2 weeks, with the Variety article and the last episode we recorded of Reggie. It just got me thinking more and more, is there anything, does the MCU offer me anything at this point? Like I have stuck with it fanatically for the last, and I'm just talking MCU, 10, 11 years. I think going on 12 years now, 13 years now. And it's like, what else can I get from it that they haven't already delivered? And maybe this is where I hop off the train and, catch it when I can. I think it's safe to say it's no longer a top priority for me, because even I feel like, I feel the fatigue. I feel the subpar product. Endgame was such a good point for me to just maybe hop off and like, okay, what have I been putting on the back burner all these years? What are the movies and the other cinema that I've missed out on? I just don't know if the MCU has anything to offer me at this point, maybe other than like cameos and like, fan theories. And I think the end credit scene for this movie is a prime example of that, where now we're just kind of getting into it right here. But seeing Beast on the screen, I mean,
Henry,
it was a whoa moment.
It was an absolute whoa moment. It was like, wow, I'm seeing the fucking Beast on the screen. And, that was awesome, but I don't know if it's worth, it's like, well, what about the movie? Like, I still want to have a really great experience with the main movie. This is like 5-10 seconds, a minute or two. Like, is it really worth making these movies a priority anymore?
I was just going to say, when I first saw him on screen, it was a whoa moment, but I also immediately went back to WandaVision when we got the Quicksilver cameo, and I was so excited, and only to have the rug pulled out from under me. So that was my, after I immediately said, whoa, it was, okay, wait a minute, are they going to pull one over me again? Yeah. And so it was that sort of moment for me, even though I still thoroughly enjoy, I am an X-Men fan at heart, but I still am like a little like gun shy to be super excited about the X-Men entering the MCU.
I said last episode that in my opinion, the MCU still has 2, maybe 3 really strong like blue chips. Fantastic Four, X-Men. I think when they drop those or we get them on screen, that's going to be, in my opinion, like make or break. I think that really could give them a second wind and get their,
it worries me.
Like really shift the energy. But after, and once again, it's not because of this movie exactly per se, but just thinking holistically of Phase 4 and, just kind of how maybe, lackluster it's been. And even like the start of Phase 5, I won't lie, it got me a little concerned that, yeah, they might still have the X-Men and Fantastic Four, but if these stories aren't good, then what's the fucking point? Right. Reading that Variety article, you're like, oh, it's not just, there's a whole gamut of obstacles that they still need to like overcome. And really at the heart of it, it comes down to like the script writing, good stories. It don't matter if we get to see Cyclops and Wolverine and fucking Reed Richards, as much as I want to see them on screen. It won't matter if the story is shit,
I think this is going to be, well, oh God, hold on. I'm going to quickly take a step back because Botter, I hate to tell you this, and I know you already know this, but you're in it, buddy. You're in the business of comic book podcasting. You're going to be paying attention regardless of whether you want to or not. Because I'm in the same boat, man. I've felt the decline. Trust me. I think a lot of us have. And I think a lot of us who are truthful with ourselves and with our taste, we know that the product has not been there since, at least consecutively since Endgame. Really, honestly, I mean, you got No Way Home, you got Guardians 3, and then your mileage varies depending on that. So, all that to be said, the MCU, we're at a pivotal point in the MCU right now. Like, as we're talking right now, the Marvels is, in my opinion, where things can change. Because going into Deadpool next year, because this is the last film we're getting until Deadpool, and Loki's over with, so no more MCU TV for a while either. Deadpool 3, this has been delayed multiple times as well. It was supposed to come out this month, actually. Marvel's was supposed to come out during the summer originally. So the fact that Deadpool has been delayed so much, and now I think Deadpool is even coming out even later. It was really supposed to come out in May of 25 or 24. Now it's coming out in July of 24. So we've got like 6 months or 8 months now, 8 months to wait for the next MCU property. This is the time for them to get their shit together across the board. And I think that Variety article not only sheds light on what has been wrong with the MCU, but it also gives them the ability to reflect a little bit and go, okay, first of all, let's stop treating our VFX people like hamsters in a wheel. Let's do that firstly, can we? Let's tone down the content. Let's stop putting out 3 movies and 3 television series. Let's stop having so much micromanaging behind the scenes. Kevin, we're looking at you, So like all of these things have been, widely broadcasted over the last couple months. I think that if we get Deadpool 3 in November, can we just agree collectively right now with the listeners, with Botter, with Blythe? Let's all just say Deadpool 3, July 2024. If it's shit, we can hop off the train. But I think that's the time. It's not now. It's not with the Marvels, because this movie's been done for a while. Like Blythe had mentioned earlier, this movie has gone through many cycles. So it's like this, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. These movies, they had COVID plus all the other shit. Let's wait to Deadpool, because I think that might be the key turning point that we're looking towards.
I don't think it's going to happen. I just do not trust.
We always see
Disney.
who the pessimist is in the group.
I do not. Well, what evidence has Disney given us that they can take a character that had full creative freedom under Fox to be as edgy as he could be, now to come over into the MCU with all of their writing, all of their VFX, all of the drama within just Disney corporate itself, their need to make money for their shareholders, their need to rely on these characters that are just going to earn a check for them that they maybe don't even necessarily care about. What have they proven? What have they shown that gives any fan right now the ability to trust that they will treat these kind of characters, X-Men characters, Deadpool, any of them with respect? I don't see it. I hope for the best, but plan for the worst. That's where I'm kind of at with the entire MCU right now. I realize Disney as a company needs to make their money for their shareholders, and their only reason they're going to be able to do that is with these familiar characters. They're not going to be able to take any kind of creative freedom or creative experiments. I don't see it. I don't see how they're going to fix anything that is just overall wrong with the corporate culture from the top down. It's just they need to, Disney as a whole needs to entirely clean house. And I don't see that happening before Deadpool comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Strong words. I think it goes to, I think you can kind of say a little bit of Chris's point. Like if depending on how they manage Deadpool 3, I think that will be a good barometer, or maybe a final barometer.
I'll still see. I say all this. I still see it.
Show me Hugh Jackman, goddammit. Show me the yellow suit.
Part of the reason why I'm slightly confident in Deadpool is just because of the wild amount of creative control that they give Ryan Reynolds. I mean, he's proved, if nothing else, this will really show how much Kevin Feige and co are in control of this universe. Is if they take away what has proved to be a solid success rate with Ryan in the first two films of Deadpool over at Fox. If Deadpool 3 is shit, we go, okay, Kevin, might be time to move on, buddy. Or either get out of the kitchen, or that's kind of my thought on it. So,
and maybe to your earlier point about there's really nothing else going on. So maybe this is Kevin Feige's chance as a creative professional himself to know all of this criticism that's going on, and to maybe have a little bandwidth and breathing room to get it right. So maybe that, glass half full, not to be the negative Nancy for the entire show, but maybe glass half full, this is their opportunity to get it right with where the future kind of holds. Because right now it just feels like the multiverse. It feels like nothing matters. It feels like there's no stakes and they can kind of do whatever they want. I think just overall, I don't know if that's a hindrance or a help to what the overall MCU is because there was such a clear path of how we got to Endgame, and now everything just feels so scattered. And, I said this earlier, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be paying attention to, and I don't know what matters anymore.
Well, so the downfall of the multiverse saga, and Blythe, you kind of sort of alluded to this, is that I'll just say right off the top before I go into my tangent here, the multiverse, I'm done with it. I'm tired of it. If you guys have seen the end of season 2 of Loki, I'm really hoping that what happens have you guys seen that, by the way? Can I?
Not yet. We do plan on watching that this weekend, but Loki season 2 has been just kind of a reminder, or I guess it's put me in the same feeling where I'm like, man, I do not give a shit about the multiverse anymore.
The stakes are gone. Like, that's the thing, is that, and this kind of alludes to what I originally wanted to say, was that movies are written in permanent marker, comics are written in dry erase. So like when you watch John Krasinski's Reed Richards die on screen, when he gets pool noodled, you're like, that's Reed Richards. He just got pool noodled. As did, you've got Professor X getting his neck snapped. You've got these are real people in my mind, like as I'm watching it happen. And I find it really mean what happened in Multiverse of Madness. If that happens in the comics, my brain goes, oh, it's fine. Because not only are there multiple versions of Reed, but there'll be a status quo of that Reed at some point down the road. So That's the difference for me. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's the wrong way to approach it.
Chris, we are entering the stage of many comic readers. You know how you start when you first get into comics, it's the capes, right? Your Marvel, DC. And eventually you grow up. Once you have that realization that there is no real stakes, that these characters are, money-making machines,
they're a piece of IP.
Yeah, like the amount of control that, certain editors have, and, that these characters have to fit in these parameters, that's when you normally start going to other titles. You go to the independents. You go into...
You go over here.
Exactly. You go into more like adult comic books that, do have stakes, that aren't going to, have an ending. I think fans of the MCU are realizing that now. You know
what also is a major difference is that when they started, at that time, just Iron Man, they were playing with pawns. Iron Man was not a household name. He was they had one shot to make one decent movie to save their entire company. Like if Iron Man had been a failure, which at that time, I don't know if people know this, but Iron Man was only the 8th highest grossing film of 2008. It was not even in the top 5, but they had to just make an okay movie just to keep afloat. And they just kept building and building with these B-list characters, Captain America, Thor, all these characters but now here's the thing. Now that they've gotten success and now they're playing with your Rook, with your King, your Queen, your Spider-Man, your X-Men, your Fantastic Four, now there's actual stakes. You know what I mean? And if you fail with Spider-Man, with Fantastic Four, with X-Men, you're donezo. You have nothing to do but reboot and try again. And that's what they've done. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen how many Spider-Man movies over the last 10 years. X-Men, same thing. Batman is another great example. Superman. There's multiple examples of these companies that when they don't make $1 billion and they're not crazy successes, they just go, well, it's a character that people like. We'll do it. We'll try again,
I was thinking this episode is going to be a little more uplifting than the last one, because I felt like the last episode, the Variety article, we were maybe a little critical. We spent a lot of time on MCU. Safe to say, listeners, you got part 2 of last week's episode.
Well, it's very well deserved, because I struggle with this because I wonder, going back to, okay, what is important? What should I be paying attention to? What matters? What's being retconned? For example, like the Loki, the Infinity Stones in the drawer. You're taught for 10 years that those were the most deadly things in the entire galaxy, and now they mean nothing.
They're
and then
paperweights.
And now you're coming into all of these Disney Plus series, and it doesn't feel like they're spending a lot of time on them. And I think back a lot to my uncle, who watched all of the MCU movies up until Endgame, and then went and saw Multiverse of Madness, didn't see WandaVision, and had no idea what was going on, had no idea of the character change that Wanda had made. And so I go back to that kind of fan a lot. The one who's only going to go to the movies, who's not going to be watching these Disney Plus shows. And what are the stakes? What's important? And I don't know that Disney as a company can handle that right now. And I think massively they made a huge mistake by not taking 1 to 2 years off after Endgame and just letting the dust settle a little bit, allowing them to gather themselves to develop what is next. And now they're sort of scrambling. And I think that the next few movies really could sort of cement where this genre as a whole sort of... they're at a fork in the road. And I feel like they've been at this fork in the road for a little while now. And now the stakes in the MCU feel much higher than it does in the actual, I guess, movie universe, if that makes sense.
Blythe, you laid it out perfectly. I think, the multiverse, it does away with stakes. That literally, if anyone dies, we can go into another universe. I mean, we see it in this movie. We see Maria die in this movie, and then bam, at the end of the movie, here's another binary, everybody. Here she is. That's what you can do in this current MCU. And just like in my favorite event comic of all time, which is Secret Wars from 2015 by Jonathan Hickman and Asad Ribic, the only thing to do with the multiverse, once you've done everything, is to destroy it. And I hope that happens sooner than later.
All right. How about we end this with just looking at the future of the MCU? We made a joke. We had trouble kind of like honing in on what, phase that we're in, but we are in phase 5. And at the time of this recording, I think a day or two prior to today, there was the announcement that a lot of the phase 5 planned movies and shows, there was a lot of shift in the schedule. So I'm looking at an article from Games Radar that I think lays out the most current Marvel phase 5 news. And Chris, you kind of hinted at it. We're getting, 1 or 2 movies and shows next year. And I've got Echo will come out in January 10th of next year. They've already showed the trailer. That's got people talking, and we're only going to get one MCU film next year, which is Deadpool 3 in July 26th. Captain America: Brave New World, Thunderbolts, Blade are slated for 2025, and we don't have any dates for Agatha: Darkhold Diaries, Daredevil: Born Again, or Ironheart.
What about the two Avengers movies? Those are not in the next couple of years?
May 1st, 2026, and then that's Kang Dynasty, and then Secret Wars is May 7th.
That feels
2027.
so far out.
So we'll be in our 40s by the time we get to see Secret Wars.
I am excited for. It's apparent that they are building up, a new generation, a younger team, and I am excited for the next generation of MCU fans to like get their thing right, like to get the characters that hopefully they get to grow up with and watch, prosper and, be in films and whatever direction they're going in. That's how I feel with the MCU is that, there's torches being passed to a new generation. And, once again, I think I just got to ask myself, like, am I going to be downed up for this ride every single time? Or is it time for me to just, maybe like just take a more of a step back? I think that's where I'm at right now. But I am excited to watch and see how this new generation takes, how they take like the new faces for the MCU. So far, like it's a very promising lineup from Amon to Kate Bishop and even Shang-Chi. Like Shang-Chi, I really enjoyed too.
Catherine Newton as Cassie Lang is good as well. Yeah,
I'm excited to see where they go with the new faces.
I didn't really like her.
Blythe is like, nah, Cassie ain't it.
Kamala Khan, Haley Steinfeld. I like both of them a lot.
What's your temperature with America Chavez, or where you at with her?
What's her old girl from
Black Widow?
Yeah, for Black Widow. I do really like her as Florence. Yeah.
Yeah, they got some badass women like for this like next phase, like some really charismatic, talented like young women like coming up, young actresses like coming up.
Yeah, who's the young male?
That's what I'm saying. When
heroes?
I said Shang-Chi, I'm like, I don't think he's that young. I don't think Simon Liu is.
Shang-Chi
like
would be
young.
An Avenger. He wouldn't be a young Avenger or a champion.
It'll be up to Tom Holland and Simon Liu and Anthony Mackie, I guess, to hold it down. But they're a little older. But
Doctor Strange is still around, and yeah.
True. All right.
Can I just say before we move on? I just want to say very quickly. I could sit here because I'm in the same boat as you, Botter, and Blythe. I'm assuming you're in a similar boat as well. My enthusiasm for the MCU is definitely at an all-time low, I would say right now, which really stinks. And we're going to be doing our review, for the Marvels on the Oblivion Bar this week as well. And I plan on going in on this film, even though I enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of issues with it. I could sit here and tell you with all sincerity that I don't feel great about it. But the moment that I get even the smallest whiff of Silver Surfer showing up in this universe, I am fucking in, man. I am in.
You're like, I take it back, Cease.
Give me Doctor Doom or Silver Surfer, and I am the biggest MCU fan again.
All right, Blythe, you got any closing remarks about the movie or just MCU in general?
I think I'm just kind of at the phase where I just understand that it's just going to be a couple hours of escapism, but it's not going to be something that I rewatch. And that's where I kind of struggle with, like, with a lot of the MCU stuff is nowadays, like, is it okay to just kind of escape for a couple of hours and just be done with it?
I think
Does it need to be something that I dive into Reddit immediately after and watch all of the YouTube videos like I have in the past, which I really, really enjoy, but maybe it's just okay to just escape for a couple of hours and be fine with it.
That is absolutely, you do deserve it, right? Like, these movies can coexist with, like, your fucking Martin Scorsese movies, right? Like, they can coexist with other genres. Like, it's fine for them to be popcorn, turn your brain off movies.
Well, what's funny is that the last two movies that I've seen is Killers of the Flower Moon and then The Marvels. So I am riding that Marty train right now. And I want to briefly say, too much brain candy is definitely a bad thing for sure. I'm still in, guys. I hate to admit it, but I'm still drinking the Kool-Aid.
We got a job to do, Chris. I'm
telling you, Botter, you can sit here and you can lie to the people all you want. You're going to be watching these movies and television series.
Chris, Blythe, I appreciate the both of you spending time with me on this episode. We went a little longer than I thought. I was like, I'm going to be courteous. We're recording. It's already like 12:30. It's already Saturday night or morning, whatever you want to see it. But regardless, I appreciate the both of you a lot. I'm going to have links to Both of your Twitters, your socials in the show notes. Chris, I have a link to the Oblivion Bar podcast. People can check out you and Aaron's Marvel's review. Blythe, I guess if anyone listening is interested in logistics and trucking and marketing, they can check out your show.
Don't laugh. It's important.
No, I think there's a lot of crossover appeal. All right. Look, if anything, the fans would be like, yay, another Blythe episode. So we gave them something.
A really quick plug for just supply chain and transportation and freight and all that good stuff. I'm really high on it because it is the story of human civilization. So it's the story of how our purchasing behavior influences the rest of the world and geopolitics and all that good stuff. So, I mean, if you like the greater MCU stuff that's going on, then maybe you'll like real world stuff too.
Blythe, that's all nice and cool, but if you want to listen to a couple dopes talk about Moon Knight, come over to the Oblivion Bar podcast. New episodes every Monday. Woo!
I did really like Moon Knight too, so
I don't even want to keep us on for a little longer because I'm about to go into some Moon Knight stuff. But anyways, listeners, there you have it, Shortbox Nation. That is our show for today. Thank you for hanging out with us. We really appreciate you spending your time with us. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a very, very, very small favor. Please leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or simply tell a friend about this show. All right, word of mouth and ratings and reviews, they help us out in a major way. I know every podcast asks you to do that, but there's a reason why all of them do. It doesn't require much on your part, and it goes a long way in helping us grow this show. If you'll stick around for another minute, which I highly encourage, you'll hear a short clip from Jerome Cabanatan, the creator of a brand new Kickstarter campaign that just launched. It's called Everyday Black Belter. It's a collection of comics from the mind of a martially artistic family man. It's also the inaugural start of a brand new segment that we're trying out. Haven't really landed on a name yet. I'm kind of hovering around kick-ass Kickstarters, but the goal is to put a spotlight on up-and-coming indie creators and really dope comic projects that you can find and back on Kickstarter. All right, the Everyday Black Belter will be linked in this episode's description and show notes, so if it piques your interest, check it out, support. Big shout out to Jerome. Besides that, you can catch us next Wednesday for a brand new episode, and or you can join us over on Patreon if you want bonus content, extra episodes. Full disclaimer, it's not free, but it's also not expensive at all to support the podcast and get extra perks and rewards. And we really try hard to make it worth your time and support. So consider joining our Patreon community at patreon.com/theshortbox, or support us for free by, like I said, leaving a rating, review, or telling a friend. In the meantime, enjoy hearing from Jerome. Take care of yourselves. Go read your comics and continue to make mine and yours Shortbox. I'll catch you next week. Peace.
Yo, what up, Shortbox Nation? This is your boy, Jerome Cabanatan, and I'm here to talk to you about my Kickstarter for my latest book, Everyday Black Belter. This graphic novel is a rhapsody of comics from the mind of a martially artistic family man. That's me. It contains a variety of strips from parody to autobio to action to martial arts philosophy and everything else in between, all weaved into a narrative about the work-life balance of a martial arts instructor and cartoonist and father and husband. So, if you like comics, cartoons, hip-hop, martial arts, sketch comedies, and I know you do, Everyday Black Belter is for you. So you back that on Kickstarter. One more time, Everyday Black Belter by Jerome Cabanatan. So back it again and again, and oh yeah, again and again.